Two brave girls save a stranger. He turns out to be a millionaire CEO. It started with thunder, the kind that rolled across the sky like distant drums, warning of something bigger on the way. Madison held tightly to her little sister Chloe's hand as they trudged down the sidewalk of their quiet Texas suburb. Their umbrella, already battered from the walk, flipped backward in a gust of wind, offering no real protection. Rain poured relentlessly, soaking their socks, their backpacks, and every thread of warmth they had left. The girls had taken a longer route home because the main street was flooded. Madison led the way, carefully watching every puddle before Chloe stepped near it. Chloe, in her two big rain boots and polka-dot coat, shivered but stayed close. A flash of lightning lit the sky, revealing the skeletal frame of an old, abandoned bus stop just ahead. As they neared it, Chloe suddenly stopped. "Look," she whispered, pointing with wide, worried eyes. Slumped against the bench was a man, completely drenched, unmoving, and eerily silent. His business shirt clung to his skin, and rain dripped from his forehead onto the pavement. Madison stepped closer. "Sir?" she said hesitantly, her voice swallowed by the storm. No reply. His lips were pale, and his body unnaturally still. "Call 911!" Madison shouted, heart pounding. Chloe reached into her backpack and pulled out her toy phone, pressing the plastic buttons with urgency, not realizing it couldn't help. Madison's eyes widened. "That's not real," she cried, then turned and ran as fast as she could toward the gas station they'd passed earlier. Her feet splashed through puddles. Her backpack bounced with every step. Cold wind cut through her jacket, but she didn't stop. Inside the gas station, she burst through the door, breathless and soaked. "Please," she cried to the startled manager. "There's a man. He's not moving. He needs help." The man grabbed his phone and called 911 without hesitation. Meanwhile, Chloe stayed by the stranger, afraid to leave him. She knelt beside him, watching his chest for signs of movement. Her hands hovered near his shoulder, unsure of what to do but unwilling to walk away. Minutes later, Madison returned with the manager, who knelt beside the man and checked for a pulse. "He's still breathing," he said with relief. Then came the distant sound of sirens, growing louder by the second. Red and blue lights cut through the storm as an ambulance arrived. Paramedics jumped out, rushed toward the scene, and lifted the man onto a stretcher. "You girls did the right thing," one said gently. Madison and Chloe stood quietly, holding hands, watching the stranger disappear into the ambulance. They still didn't know who he was, only that someone had been in trouble, and they had chosen to help. As the vehicle drove off into the rain, Chloe looked up. "Do you think he'll be okay?" she asked. Madison didn't answer right away. She stared after the flashing lights, the storm now quieting just a little. "I hope so," she whispered. And with that, the two sisters turned back toward home, unaware that this one small act of kindness had just changed all of their lives forever. The storm had passed by morning, leaving behind a soaked and silent city. Inside St. Mary's Hospital, room 204 was dim, lit only by a strip of sunlight peeking through half-closed blinds. Machines hummed softly. The man in the bed stirred slowly, as though waking from a deep, painful dream. His eyelids fluttered open, revealing tired, confused eyes that scanned the unfamiliar ceiling. A nurse, noticing movement, approached his side. "Sir? Can you hear me?" she asked gently, adjusting his IV. His throat was dry, his voice barely a whisper. "Where am I?" he asked, hoarse and unsure. "St. Mary's Hospital," she replied. "You were found unconscious last night and brought in during the storm. You were severely dehydrated and in shock." He closed his eyes, trying to remember. Rain, darkness, a bench, then nothing. "Who found me?" he asked. "Two little girls," she said with a soft smile. "They saw you at an old bus stop and got help." His brows knit together, trying to grasp the thought. "Did they know who I was?" he asked. The nurse chuckled gently. "No, they just cared enough to help." That answer stunned him. Ryan Blake, founder and CEO of Blake Tech, a Fortune 500 company, was used to being noticed because of who he was, not because someone genuinely cared. And yet, these children, strangers, hadn't walked past. They hadn't hesitated. That hit him harder than anything else. The last thing he remembered before collapsing was storming out of a glass-walled boardroom, heart racing after discovering betrayal from one of his top executives. The pressure had been mounting for months. Deal after deal, flight after flight, betrayal after betrayal. He had walked aimlessly into the storm, needing to escape everything. And now, lying in a hospital bed, saved by 2 children, he felt something crack open inside him. The doctor entered with a clipboard, scanning his vitals. "You're lucky," he said. "Extreme fatigue, stress overload, and severe dehydration. Your body forced you to stop." Ryan nodded, still processing everything. "You'll recover," the doctor continued, "but you'll need time. No work, no stress, just rest." Ryan didn't argue. For once, he had no fight in him. Later, the nurse returned with a small meal and an update. "You've made the news," she said lightly. "Your assistant filed a missing persons report. When the EMTs brought you in, someone recognized your face." Ryan gave a weak smile. "Of course they did." "They thought you'd been kidnapped or something worse," she added, "but really you just needed to break." He looked away, staring out the window. Outside, the world had moved on without him. People walked in and out of the hospital. Cars passed, birds landed on ledges. And yet, inside him, something was changing. The image of those 2 girls lingered in his mind, standing in the rain, risking their safety for a stranger. No cameras, no applause, just compassion. "Can you find their names?" he asked softly. The nurse paused. "Of course, I'll see what I can do." As she left the room, Ryan leaned back into the pillows, still staring at the sunlit window. He wasn't sure why it mattered so much, but it did. He didn't feel like a CEO anymore, not a businessman, not a headline, just a man who had fallen and been lifted back up by the smallest, kindest hands. For the first time in a long time, he felt something real, something human. It had been 7 days since Ryan Blake left the hospital. Since then, something inside him hadn't stopped thinking about the 2 small girls who had stopped in the rain and changed the course of his life. Now, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops of a quiet Texas neighborhood, a black SUV pulled up outside a weathered apartment building. Ryan stepped out, dressed not in a tailored suit, but in a gray hoodie and dark jeans. In his hands was a soft, oversized teddy bear. He looked up at the building, faded paint, rusted railings, bicycles stacked near the door, and walked toward it with steady purpose. Apartment 2B. He knocked gently. Inside, Madison was coloring while Chloe tried to balance a cracker on her nose. Both girls turned as the knock echoed through the small space. Their mother, Laura, opened the door slowly. Her expression shifted from guarded to confused to stunned as she recognized him. "Hi," Ryan said with a soft smile. "I'm Ryan Blake." Chloe gasped and tugged Madison's sleeve. "It's the sleepy guy," she whispered. Ryan knelt down and held out the giant teddy bear. "Not so sleepy anymore, thanks to you." Madison looked up at him. "You're the man from the news." He nodded. "Yes, but that night I was just someone who needed help." Laura stepped aside to let him in, her eyes still unsure. "Please, come in." The apartment was small, worn around the edges, but filled with warmth. Photos were taped to the fridge, and a sweet smell of mac and cheese filled the air. Ryan sat at their table, listening as the girls chatted about school, their favorite cartoons, and their version of the stormy night. He laughed more than he had in months. Laura served dinner, mac and cheese, canned peas, and sliced oranges, and Ryan ate every bite like it was a luxury. It wasn't the food, it was the feeling. A home, a table surrounded by laughter, not pressure. As the girls played nearby, Laura opened up. She told him about working nights at a local diner, cleaning houses during the week, and doing her best to raise her daughters with dignity. Ryan looked at her with deep respect. "You're raising 2 remarkable kids," he said. "They didn't just help me. They reminded me of something I lost. After dinner, Chloe showed off her unicorn drawings while Madison handed Ryan a crayon-made thank you card with uneven hearts. He took it gently. "I'm keeping this forever," he said sincerely. Then he stood, reached into his jacket, and pulled out a thick white envelope. "This," he said, handing it to Laura, "is just a small way to thank you for giving me something I didn't even know I needed." Inside was scholarship letters, a housing grant approval, and documents for a trust fund. Laura's hands trembled as she read. I don't know what to say." Ryan gently interrupted. "You don't have to say anything. Your daughters already said it, with their actions." Tears welled in Laura's eyes. Chloe leaned in and asked, "Does this mean you're kind of like part of our family now?" Ryan knelt again, looking at her sweet, hopeful face. "If you'll have me," he whispered. In that small, imperfect living room, surrounded by warmth, simplicity, and love, Ryan Blake, once lost in a world of suits and skyscrapers, felt more at home than ever before. 3 months had passed since Ryan Blake had stepped into that modest apartment and left forever changed. Now, the Blake Tech Convention Center glowed under city lights, filled with the hum of voices and the clink of champagne glasses. It was the company's annual charity gala, but this year's event carried a different kind of weight. Laura, Madison, and Chloe stood near the entrance, dressed in simple but elegant outfits Ryan had arranged. Laura looked nervous but proud. Madison held tightly to her sister's hand, and Chloe clutched her beloved teddy bear, its bow slightly wrinkled but still sparkling. Ryan met them at the door personally, wearing a classic black suit, but no ego. "You all look amazing," he said warmly. Chloe twirled. "I feel like a fairy," he smiled. "You're better than that. You're real magic." Inside, the ballroom sparkled with chandeliers and soft music. The guests, investors, politicians, philanthropists, turned when Ryan walked in with the family. Some whispered, others just stared. As the evening went on, Ryan stayed close to the girls, never once drifting into the usual corporate conversations. When the stage lights dimmed, the host called for attention. "Please welcome the founder of Blake Tech, Mr. Ryan Blake." Applause followed, and Ryan stepped into the spotlight. He didn't take out notes. He didn't thank donors or list numbers. Instead, he began, "I'd like to tell you a story." The room fell into a hush. "A few months ago, I disappeared. Not physically, but emotionally. I was lost." His voice was steady but raw. "And 2 little girls found me. Not because they knew who I was, but because they saw someone who needed help." He gestured toward Madison and Chloe. Gasps spread, faces turned. "They reminded me that humanity still exists outside boardroom and contracts. They reminded me to feel again." He left the stage and walked over to Chloe. From behind his back, he pulled out a glittery toy microphone and smiled. "Chloe, want to say something?" She stood on her chair, wide-eyed, gripping the mic. After a nervous pause, she whispered, "Helping is what heroes do." The room burst into applause, long, loud, and full of emotion. Cameras flashed, people stood, some cried. Ryan didn't look at the media. He looked at the 3 people who now meant more than any company ever had. "This," he said quietly, returning to the mic, "is what wealth really means. Not what you build, but what you give. Not who knows your name, but who holds your heart." The crowd rose again. Later, the headlines would call it the most unforgettable moment in gala history. But Ryan didn't care about headlines anymore. That night, he didn't ride home alone in a car with tinted windows. He sat between Madison and Chloe in the back seat, laughing, holding their hands. Laura rode up front, smiling through the mirror. He had rediscovered success, not in stock prices or shareholder approval, but in the love of 3 people who had once been strangers. And as the city lights faded behind them, Ryan Blake finally understood. He was more than a CEO. He was a man who had been saved and changed by the smallest hearts with the biggest love